and you just kind of ignore it. We just think about it. You have newspapers, you have magazine paper, notebook paper, you have tissue paper, toilet paper. You'll have maybe a calendar which has a different type of paper. You'll have within your notebook only the cover is a different paper, inside is different paper. So there is paper everywhere, and you don't even realize there are so many different types of materials lying around you at the moment that you can use. Right? So you shouldn't ignore paper. Kind of gets ignored usually because it's just available everywhere. I would urge you all to imagine a world which doesn't have paper and think about how life would be. Now to get to the scientific side of things a little bit, as to how origami is being used in science, maths, and education, etc. around the world at the moment. A simple thing like you did aerodynamics earlier, an airplane, it flies because it's following the principles of aerodynamics. A paper plane that you make also flies because of those same principles. If you extrapolate those same folds and the design that you do with paper, you extrapolate to a larger size, if you have enough thrust on it, it's going to fly because it's following the same principles of aerodynamics, right? In fact, one of the early record holders for the longest paper plane flight was a Boeing engineer from Boeing, this aerospace, and he held the record for many years until that Japanese guy broke his record. So it's used in aerodynamics. If you go into the field of medicine, there is something called a stent, which is basically a really tiny tube that they put into a collapsed blood vessel, and this goes inside and expands and opens that blood vessel up when you have a collapsed blood vessel. That folding sequence of how it expands and collapses was done using origami by two Oxford University researchers who developed it using origami. There is something called DNA folding, which is basically used for drug delivery for patients and things like that. So that folding sequence, origami lends itself to that because you've already done so much research as to what happens to paper when you fold it. How do the layers stack one on top of another, how that happens. So since that research has already been done, you can just apply those same principles to something like DNA folding also and use that as an inspiration to try and understand this better. Let me skip that. In fact, there's a person who, what he did was, he developed this special ink in his printer that you print these patterns out on the paper and it comes out with the ink wet on the paper. And as the ink dries, the paper will fold itself. And fold itself and collapse and become a three-dimensional shape like that. So you know the idea that you need to fold the paper is also being eroded now. You can it will fold itself also at the moment. Right? In terms of inspiration, the Japanese aerospace program had a guy called Koira Miura, who took origami as inspiration to design the folding sequence and pattern of the solar array panels for the Japanese satellites. So that the satellite, the solar array panel, once it opens out, has to be as big as possible. But when it folds, it has to become as small as possible so it can fit in that rocket. Right? The folding pattern of how it folds if it compresses and unfolds itself without getting stuck, because that's otherwise that many billions that you're losing. So how that folding sequence was developed using origami as a technique, which in fact they still use over there, which is this same concept. There are people still doing research in terms of how you can fold and unfold structures using origami as inspiration, because these all follow certain laws of physics and it's all mathematics finally in the end. So how something can collapse on itself and unfold itself, origami is an amazing method to figure that out. You have self-folding robots, you have robots that fold itself using heat, nanobots, all being inspired by origami as the basic principle. One of the things that I have been doing some study into is in South India you have something called kolam, which is similar to your rangoli. So those kolam patterns and origami kind of also mesh. It's following similar geometric sequences. So we've been seeing how you can correlate those two ideas together to make something different and something unique out of that as well. So it's not necessary for you to only fold paper into something and make it into something usable. You can take some other concept and idea and introduce that to origami to try to use that as inspiration in origami as well. Like I said, packaging design, there is no limit to the kind of packaging that you can do. You can make billions and billions of origami boxes using paper, card paper, whatever is available. There are people who use it for inventive things like this kind of shelters. That same concept, if you make it larger, it becomes almost like a tent. The similar folding sequence, you can just use it as only what we call artistic decoration purposes. Also, it's not necessary for it to be a utilitarian thing either. Like I said, furniture, it's an amazing thing to make folding furniture. I'm sure I've seen those cardboard boxes that you can fold and use as furniture. In fact, one of the things that I was trying to do was IFB washing machines and dryers and all that you get. They wanted to do something with that cardboard box after the customer buys it. Because that box is just a box, so what do you do with it? So we tried to fold those boxes into furniture. And like that table was made without any cutting. It was that cardboard box. I only added fold lines and everything to it. So it compresses and folds itself and becomes that table level. Like I said, lampshades, lanterns, it's quite immensely used over there. Fashion design, the kind of work that is being done in fashion with origami is quite insane. And paper, generally paper itself as a material for furniture is used a lot. In fact, a lot of you all might not know. Paper seems like it's very flimsy and floppy and it's just a weak material. Once you just start adding a few folds to it, it becomes really strong. Simple example is cardboard. What is in between those two sheets of card paper that is there over there? It's basically a folded sheet of paper, folded like triangles, right? And it automatically becomes so sturdy. These guys made this massive pavilion, so a huge pavilion in Germany, where they use just rolled paper. I don't know if you all have the generation where you got hit with the rolled newspaper, but it hurts. So when you roll paper up, it becomes really strong, right? So you can roll paper up also and make it into a material that you can use for construction, which they use over here. In fact, in Japan, they do use it for constructing all kinds of structures and houses over there, using paper tubes. One of the things that people don't realize, like I said, is just how adding folds makes something much stronger. A simple crumpled sheet of paper, what people realized was that the kind of strength that is imparted to a sheet of paper by just crushing it, because of the randomness of the folds and the randomness of the lines and the creases that form inside it, it becomes so strong that you can only compress it up to like 90% of the time, where there is, inside that structure, 90% is air. The rest of it is all just fold lines and paper that is just layered like in between. But it becomes extremely strong. They've still not understood why it is strong. This research is still going on about that. They still don't know why it is so strong. But everybody knows that if you crush paper and put it for packaging or glass bottles, it will keep it safe. But you don't know why. And still nobody knows why. They're trying to still figure that out. In fact, in the world today, origami is extremely scientific and extremely mathematical in terms of its research and things being done about it, right? For instance, there is something called the OSME, which is held every 4 years in the US, or it depends, it's all over the world, where it is origami in science, education and mathematics. And this is the 8th year that is running, where people come and present papers in terms of what is the kind of research and the thing being done and how they can further use origami as a tool to teach and explore mathematics and science. Like I said, origami is extremely mathematical. It is extremely computational also now. There are numerous software available which literally tells you when you fold the paper what bit of the paper becomes what part of the model as you're folding it. There is software where you can input the crease pattern that you've got, and as you drag the slider, it will compress the folds and tell you how the paper will fold and what will happen to it. There is another software which basically all you need to do is enter the X and Y coordinates of one point on your square sheet of paper. And this software will give you a step-by-step instructions of how to get that point with only folds. No ruler required, no protractor, no nothing. You just use only folds, and using a X and Y coordinates, it will tell you how to get that point. And nowadays, the buzzword is artificial intelligence and AI. AI has tried to do origami, it's failed miserably because we still need somebody to actually fold it. It's not reached a point where it is usable yet. I would say AI is great to make origami adjacent designs or origami like designs. It is not origami. As an origami person, I feel almost insulted to say that this is origami because it doesn't follow any of the rules of origami yet. But it's quite interesting, it's very unique. The kind of things that people do with AI and using folds as an idea is very interesting and very different. I'm sure wouldn't have otherwise seen things like this. Let me go ahead. So in my opinion, AI and origami right now, AI is great for inspiration to then design some origami item. For instance, these are just some AI